In an age where misinformation and disinformation are all around us, the need and premium on quality journalism, it remains high. That's why we've launched this very show, The Lead, to lend our voices to the critical stories we cover. My name's Graeme Raubenheimer, your host, and coming up in our debut edition of The Lead, we shoot the breeze with News24 Editor-in-Chief Adriaan Basson. What's the top story on his mind right now? What keeps him up at night? And where to next for the powerhouse that is News24? Late in the show, we'll turn to our trending topic and we'll end on a somewhat lighter note. But first, let's chat right now in our Cape Town studios for The Lead on News24. Well, he's revered for busting Bosasa. Remember Gavin Watson's old business, or African Global Operations, whatever you want to call it. And sleuthing through intricate state capture documents via the Gupta leaks. Adriaan Basson is a multi-award-winning journalist. He comes with a shared vision for The Lead, and it is my distinct pleasure to chat with him right now. How's it? How are you?
Hello, Graeme. I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I can't complain. Thank you so much for the opportunity and bringing me on board with News24. This has been quite a unique project to undertake in such a short space of time. It's been very daunting, but I think we've got a winning formula thus far, and I think it's going to be so lekker.
I'm very excited about launching this podcast with you. We've done a few podcasts in the past, and there's so much podcast and audio around these days. I've just realized that, we have to put our journalism on podcasts. So many people want to listen to podcasts now. People prefer to listen to their news or their content via audio when they're driving, when they're commuting, and we should be in that space.
100%, but I know that you have a shared vision in terms of the inspiration behind it. You do listen to podcasts yourself. You're not just an ink man and going out and getting your stories. You listen to it a lot. You listen to a lot of the broadcasters in South Africa today. What's your key inspiration for the show?
I think that, News24 has gone through a massive evolution over the past few years, from an aggregator of news to South Africa's largest website, with now a big newsroom of over 110 permanent journalists who work for News24 between Johannesburg, Cape Town, producing agenda-setting stories on a daily basis, an award-winning investigations team headed by Pieter de Tooy in our Johannesburg office, a strong political team. We've just launched a disinformation desk. We started publishing good news stories this year. We have a dedicated team looking for those stories about innovation, about science, about people making South Africa good. And I think it is time to tell those stories in audio as well. Audio is a fantastic format. I've always been a fan. I grew up with radio in the office, in my dad's car. Started listening to podcasts a few years ago, like all of us, listening to the New York Times, The Daily, listening to Washington Post, to the FT, to Pot Saves America. I've got a few podcasts that I love, but I've been missing a real good South African current affairs, news, politics podcast. And I think this is what it's going to become, because we have the fantastic journalism on News24 in the written format. We have a fantastic multimedia team that does video, and we should also have a great audio offering.
100%. Who do you think is your hero locally when it comes to broadcast? Like, who's that person that sticks out for you, and who's your international hero?
Look, I grew up with 702 in Johannesburg. Sure. That's where I cut my journalistic teeth in the days of John Robbie, Reddy Klabi, David O'Sullivan. Those were the broadcasters that were in my ears when I was on the road, and they inspired me. Bruce Whitfield, Stephen Grootes, those guys, to really also develop the ability as a print journalist to be able to talk, to speak about my stories. So that's really what I love. Michael Barbaro of the New York Times, The Daily, is just fantastic. I think the ability he has to unearth the journalism from his newsroom, to really make his journalists shine from the New York Times, to extract that depth, that analysis, that extra layer of content is just beautiful. So I think we're in the right space.
Allow me to be self-indulgent. I hope I can add to the list over time, but I'd like to think, you brought me on with a clear sort of idea of really getting to the heart of good journalism these days. There's such a lot of noise out there. Yeah. And I feel, for me, Adriaan, that context when it comes to journalism is lost a lot of the time. Yeah. That's my personal opinion. Context is king. Would you agree with something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Where podcasts differ for me from radio. Radio is very fast, right? Because it's live and it has very specific time limits. Where with podcasts, it's up to us how long we want our podcast to be. And the readers or the listeners will ultimately decide how long they listen for. It must be gripping, of course. But I think, if you take away that pressure from live time limiting, you can actually get down into the detail of what's going on. And Graeme, there's certainly enough stories in South Africa at the moment to spend time unpacking the layers of complexity, the layers of dynamics, something like Donald Trump's trade war that is unleashed also in South Africa. I mean, there is layers upon layers. And I think as South Africans and as News24 specifically, we need to sometimes just slow down and unpack the issues, talk about the multiplicity of issues. There's no easy answers. There's no a duality in this world. Things are not just black or white. Things are complicated. And I hope this podcast gives us that opportunity for you to speak to our journalists and to give them the time on an audio platform to actually get into the depth of the story, into all the sides, into the voices, the people that they've spoken to take our readers and our listeners really into the world of journalism, into the car, into the press conference, into parliament, into the courtroom, and give people a sense of what we experience every day.
Just to your point, having that conversation with your specialist investigative reporter or journalist, Jeff Wicks, he's been covering this Musi Matlala, the cat,
Yes.
and his exclusive stories there. It's a huge web that you need to unweave and get into the nitty-gritties of. And him and I have already had some conversations in that regard. So I think stay tuned to the lead in the coming weeks, because I know, as he's already alluded to me, Jeff has said there's going to be some fantastic stories coming out. And again, that's where I feel context is going to be so important. Which story today do you think is not getting enough love, Adriaan?
Look, Jeff Wicks, our investigative journalist, is absolutely incredible. He uncovered the Babita Deokaran scandal 2 years ago, and that series was titled Silenced. We've published many of his stories on News24. We published a documentary actually on the death of Babita Deokaran, the whistleblower, the very brave whistleblower from the Gauteng Health Department, who lost her life because she unearthed corruption in the Gauteng Health Department. And I love the fact that we have the capacity and the time and the luxury at News24 to unpack these stories, to actually dig deep and reveal those kind of figures like the cat behind these tender schemes. Graeme, there's billions of money being extracted from South Africa every year illegally through tender corruption, through procurement fraud. And News24 is at the forefront of exposing that, and we will remain at the forefront of doing that. So I think the work coming out of our investigations team is incredibly important to shape our future. I always joke when I speak to journalism students, and I say, the point of journalism really is to look for the things that people want to hide from you. The rest is PR. I mean, if you... It's really about the information, the documents, the meetings, the secrecy around stories that makes journalism what it is. So I think, from our investigations team, there's a lot coming this year. We started with our investigation into Paul Mashatile, the deputy president, last year. We've uncovered a lot about his lifestyle, about the fact that he is clearly a kept man by a lot of business interests. He's still the front runner to take over from President Cyril Ramaphosa's ANC leader. We'll definitely dig further on that topic. And then, as I said earlier, the world is in a crazy space. I don't know about you, but some days it feels to me like the craziest people have taken over the world. And top of it, the list is Donald Trump, the president of America, who has made South Africa one of his very personal projects since he took office just over a month ago. It's actually insane to think of the stuff is done in just over a month,
It's only taken us 9 minutes to have Trump's name come up in this podcast, right? Because he's ubiquitous. He's everywhere at the moment. He's making all the headlines.
And we have to unpack Trump. We can't glibly dismiss or praise him. I know on the News24 comments section, if you look at that, there's a lot of Trump fans. There's also people who hate him. There's people who can't wait to see the back of him in less than 4 years. we have to deal with him as South Africa, as a government. We are in a world of realpolitik now. We have to make decisions that benefit our country. We are not a rich country. In fact, we have deep financial troubles. We have massive government debt, over 6 trillion rand of government debt. We pay more than 1 billion rand a debt on interest. I mean, nobody can survive like that. Your household can't, I can't, and South Africa certainly can't. And we have to make peace with the fact that he's in the White House for at least 4 years. The Republican Party could be in the White House for longer than that. How do we deal with this party that deeply believes South Africa is a troubled state? And I think we need to unpack that on the show as well. Talk about the fact that South Africa is a significant player in the world, but we are no longer that exceptional country of 35 years ago when Nelson Mandela was released from prison and became president. We have lost that shine through years of corruption, through years of poor management of governance, through poor management of the economy, through not growing our employment rate significantly, through a education system that still produces some of the worst results in the world. What are we going to do about this? And I think that is the challenge to all of us as South Africans, and particularly to us as journalists at News24, is to come up not only highlighting the problems, but also with solutions. And we try to highlight that on our platform.
100%. And call me a little bit naive, but I think that there are also very beautiful, positive stories in the and I hate to use the word ordinary South African, but the lay person every day and what they're trying to do to change the fabric of this country. And I think also at a multi-institutional level, I think the Reserve Bank and SARS are great tenets, are fantastic turnaround plans, and being able to pivot South Africa on a global economic scale in fantastic ways. I mean, if you can just see that in how we've been handling inflation. And I don't think the Reserve Bank gets enough love for that. And I think that's down to all the noise about what the future is going to be with Trump and Trump 2.0 and the greenback and all of that. And this leads me to my next question. And you're listening to the voice of our editor-in-chief, Adriaan Basson. We're touching on geopolitics. I knew it was going to come up eventually. Do you sense that Trump's, and a lot of people call it the dog whistle, do you think that that's being taken seriously beyond the Afrikaner rights groups at the moment? Do you think that there's a groundswell of support in South Africa for what Trump has basically uttered about South Africa in recent weeks?
Just before I answer your question, I'm going to do that annoying thing that interviewers don't like, but I want to go back to your previous question.
No, that's cool.
Around the good things in South Africa. So I want to tell you a story. Last year, I was privileged enough to go on a sabbatical. For 3 months, the company said, get out of the office, go into the real world, go read books, go walk, drink coffee and wine. I love wine, by the way. You will still realize that. We'll talk about good South African wines as well on this show. But I got, for 3 months, I was privileged enough to crisscross the country in my bakkie. I went up to the Kruger Park with my kids. I came back to Stellenbosch and the winelands. I went to walk the Hermanus Camino. I spent a lot of time just driving out into rural areas and the countryside. This country has the best people in the world.
110%.
And we kind of know it and we live it, but we often beat ourselves up. We often have this thing in South Africa where we beat ourselves up about where we are. Yes, we have big problems. No one can deny that, and I certainly won't. I mean, we've been at the forefront of exposing the corruption, etc., in the country. But at the same time, we have to realize that from the SARS Commissioner, Edward Kieswetter, to the President or the Governor of the Reserve Bank, Lesetja Ganyagu, to the normal people I met on my travels last year who just keep the country going, who's giving school kids lifts to school, who's feeding kids, who's trying to keep Eskom power plants running, who's doing 2 or 3 nursing jobs to look at poor people who can't afford a medical service. They are amazing, incredible people in South Africa. And as News24, we will increasingly do those stories as well, because the story of South Africa is not a simple single narrative. It's not about a country in the doldrums. I certainly don't believe that we are a shithole country as some others up north may do. I think we are a fantastic country with great people,
Totally agree.
With poor leaders. And that is the story that News24 will continue to tell. I think we had to rethink the way we tell news stories, because news often pivots to what's broken and what's negative. And of course, we have to be there. You know, that old story of when the plane takes off successfully, we don't report on it. But when the plane crashes, we have to report on it. But I think we need to do a few stories about planes taking off successfully and the pilots flying those planes and the building of those planes. And using that metaphor, we've already started getting into our schools, getting into amazing teachers doing amazing stuff in South African schools, not always in privileged, rich areas, in poor areas. Anyway, that's my song and dance around South Africa, and our readers will see on News24 much more of that.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
And if we can answer my Trump question,
Getting back to Trump,
do you think there is the groundswell there?
Look,
I mean, we saw some guys come out with their placards.
Yeah, I think the support for Trump is limited in South Africa. I think what I've experienced, certainly speaking to South Africans, is there's a sense that people like his can-do attitude. The fact that he is moving fast. We've got a very slow president in Ramaphosa who likes to move slow and likes to think things through and plays the so-called long game, if there's a game, actually. I think a lot of people can say, without talking ideology, that they love the fact that Trump moves fast, that he's got into office, that he started doing things, whatever we think of the things he's done. And I get the sense that a lot of South Africans like that aspect of him. Of course, what he has done is up for debate. You know, people will have their own views around his trade wars against China, Canada, and Mexico. Certainly, I have strong views about what he's done against South Africa. I think a lot of it is based on absolute lies and disinformation. We simply don't have land grabs of white farmers' land in South Africa. It is factually incorrect. And in fact, to say that and to do things based on a lie actually works against those farmers, against the very hardworking South African commercial farmers who are providing food security to our country.
And black farm owners. I've interviewed black farm owners in the Eastern Free State on the ground as a journalist who have been the victims of rural violent crime.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it irks me when organizations like AfriForum goes and perpetuates these lies. We have enough problems in South Africa. You don't have to go and tell lies to Donald Trump. You can go tell him the truth. You can go tell him about our 32% unemployment rate, our 45% unemployment rate under young people. Those are dire things, you know. Of course, our government should be ashamed of those things. But you don't have to make up lies about things that's not happening. We can debate the Expropriations Act. There are people who will say the act should not contain the word null compensation, and there's others like lawyers who say, well, null compensation was always possible even within the constraints of Section 25 of the Constitution. My point is, as a country, we need to solve these issues domestically. We need to have these debates internally around the future of BE, around our relationships with countries like Iran. It shouldn't be up to Donald Trump to tell us what to do. But of course, we live in a world now where Trump, who's the head of the richest country in the world, with who we do a lot of trade, a lot of South African farmers, car manufacturers, and mines are dependent on exports to America, where they are at the peril of Trump's whim now and of what he believes and what he's told. And that's why it's so important, I think, to get the direct and the correct message in front of him.
Mm-hmm. I want to sort of move to something a little bit lighter. I'm going to be incorporating this into all of our shows on the lead on News24 going ahead. Sure. You may see in the middle of the table here, Adriaan, it's my little gift to you. I always loved it as a kid. I quickly ran outside the Media24 building here in Cape Town to get them, and they were 50 cents each. It's a chappie. You're allowed to.
I haven't had chappies in years. There's some yellow ones, there's green ones, and red ones.
Okay, I'm not sure about the watermelon flavor or the mint one. But I think you're going to go for a fruit one, right? The original yellow one, right?
Sure.
Okay, lekker.
So you want me to unwrap a chappie for you?
And then I would like you to read to me what you think is the did you know that catches your eye the most. So I know you guys like to play 30 seconds. I thought I'd bring the Graeme Raubenheimer spin on things, and we could do the chappies.
Yes. Okay, well, let's see what's left of this little paper.
You can choose which one you like.
Okay. Did you know... Oh, my eyesight's not the best. Did you know only that only female mosquitoes bite humans. No, I didn't.
I actually also didn't
My
know
goodness.
that. I knew I was going to have something about a bird. The full name of Donald Duck is Donald Fauntleroy Duck. I didn't know that.
Well, I wonder what happens to the male mosquitoes then if the females bite.
Yeah.
Goodness me, gonna have to find out.
And then, did you know 547, the Hawaiian alphabet has only 12 letters?
Which alphabet?
The Hawaiian.
Hawaiian alphabet. Okay, well,
There you go. The more you know. Just to end off, I mean, how for me coming into Media24, it's a big organization. There's a lot of moving parts. It's very efficient, I must say. It is definitely one of the most efficient newsrooms, and I don't say that lightly, that I've ever been in. It's a lot. You're very busy.
Yeah.
What keeps you up at night?
Female mosquitoes in summer in Cape Town. Look, I sleep very well. That's one of the great things in my life is I've always slept well.
Funny enough, me too.
But I do worry at the moment about our position as a country globally and whether we are thinking deep enough to solve our own troubles as a country, and specifically on the economics front and on the unemployment front. So in a nutshell, the state of our economy keeps me awake. The state of our unemployment rate keeps me awake. I think, Graeme, if we, as this generation, are not going to make a significant impact on the fortunes of this country economically to create more jobs, we are in deep trouble. And I don't want to leave this planet one day and leave this country and know that my kids will have to deal with a bigger problem than what we have today. We simply cannot have a 30 to 45% unemployment rate. It is unattainable. It is a ticking time bomb, to use that much used saying. So that's probably at a macro level what keeps me awake. I do think that our country is in a relatively stable position in terms of the government of national unity. I think we should give ourselves praise for the fact that merely 10 months after the GNU was formed, it seems to be relatively stable. The fact that we can now have a party like the DA cancelling the budget because they told Ramaphosa we are not going to support a VAT increase is significant. I think we live in interesting times where political allegiances are changing, where the DA, COSATU and the SACP agreed on something and not the ANC. But what does this all mean? I think it means that citizens will have more say going forward, that we will have more say in the way our country is run, in the people who run our country, and that we should be loud and clear about what we demand of our government and how we can play a role in solving these massive issues.
And I think that's that in a hat. Unless you want to talk about wine, which I know we'll spend another hour.
We can talk about cricket, but not today, because I'm also losing sleep about the fact that the Proteas just can't seem to win those knockout games. But maybe you'll get sports editor Lloyd Bernard in to 100%. But I'm really looking forward, Graeme, and maybe if I can ask you, why are you here? I mean, why was this an attractive proposition for you?
I think it's an attractive proposition because I'd never worked in Media24 before. B, I'd always driven past the building and thought there's a lot of cool people there probably, and it looks very nice. I'd probably like to work there one day. No, but on an honest level, I have always wanted to, as a little boy's dream, making tapes in my garage with my old Jack Russell dogs. I've always liked having conversations with people and talking about the things that matter. And I think this is a vital opportunity at my 15-year point in my career in broadcasting to share a little bit of my expertise, but do it in a news organization that I know has always consistently punched above its weight and is really now has been in the big leagues for a really long time. So it is a privilege for me to be here, and especially as a white male in where we find in South Africa at the moment, and our discussions again about inequalities and etc. I feel it's a huge honor for me to sit here today to have this, and I genuinely always feel that way. It's a huge honor for my voice to be heard whether 10 people listen to this or 10 million people listen to this podcast. The fact that I'm in this room with such fantastic minds, for me is the biggest honor.
Graeme, now you and I were both out there a few years ago covering the news, right? How has the world of broadcast journalism or audio journalism changed since you started going out to cover court cases for the likes of Cape Talk, ENCA, to today, where we are very much in a digital world?
I'd like to think that at least we were at a point where we were starting to incorporate like the smartphones early on, and the Barry Batemans were running around and they were championing Twitter when it was still known as Twitter. And we'd like to think that we were like trendsetters in many regards. And looking back, it's easy to have those rose tinted glasses in that sort of sense. I think how it's being done now, and we've had this discussion before, is that effectively we have to work with fewer tools at our disposal, right? And yet be overburdened per journalist to make sure that we tell the stories that matter in the most perfect sense, right? So we're overburdened as journalists, sure, to a large extent, but it's also a testament to how many tools we have within ourselves, not necessarily the physical tools that are given to us to achieve that. And I think South African journalists are some of the most hardworking journalists in the world. And I say that also in the broadcast sense. There are guys in the city of Cape Town that go out and they're busy filing news footage on a daily basis for up to 20 syndicated services. Somit, Wesley, you know exactly who I'm talking about. Those guys work really hard, and I take my hat off to them because they're putting food on the table every night, and it's difficult. It's not everybody's in the big major news organizations, right? And a lot of them aspire to be, and a lot of people also see the value in just working for themselves. So it's a difficult game. You got to stay relevant and you got to stay humble, I think.
Graeme, tell me, you've interviewed many people in your life, and you're going to interview hundreds and hopefully thousands of people on this podcast from this show. Favorite interview so far of your career?
There's been quite a few, but I'd probably say my favorite interview / interaction was with Sir Ian McKellen. That was just once upon a time, because I nerded out. I lost all inhibitions. Here's the guy who plays Gandalf in Lord of the Rings and Magneto and all the rest. And then I just interviewed John Carney the other day. I know it's actors themed, but John Carney's the most humble guy you'll ever find. He has no negative bones in his body, and is just an authentic, genuine human being. He's not putting on a show. He's just having a conversation with you. So shout out to John Carney and Sir Ian McKellen. They're just those special, you can just feel that special part of them, right? And then lastly, I think the most funniest that I've ever had was Gwede Mantashe. I tried to interview him, and then he said to me, "What's your name?" So I said, "Graeme Raubenheimer." I was very young. And then he said, "The Quis Raubenheimer Dam." So I said, "What?" "Oh, the Quis Raubenheimer Dam in Oudtshoorn." So I said, "Yes, that's kind of part of my family background thing." And he remembered that dam.
Wow.
I don't know why, Adriaan, but that has stuck with me my whole life. And it's just one of those moments where you didn't expect that sort of response from this particular person, and yet they responded in that sort of way. It's not really, those are the things at the top of my head. I'm sure there's some cool interview I did that I'm just not remembering right now.
What is your vision for this podcast, your dream?
Look, it needs to be the best things that you would hear on any average broadcast platform, married with the fact that you're getting the most cutting edge journalism in South Africa, and marrying that in one sense that it's a show for News24 that has the best versions of radio and the best versions of podcasts married together. And hopefully we will keep piquing your interest throughout these conversations, and that you'll want to keep switching on.
Fantastic. Can't wait for it to start. All the best.
Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it. To our trending topic now, and in a debate tabled by EFF leader Julius Malema, the National Assembly's put the Trump administration's PEPFAR pullout high on the agenda. The cuts in US foreign aid, the Western Cape government, for example, argues, may well lead to a rise in HIV/AIDS infections. HIV testing is also reported to be severely impacted in parts of South Africa. While speaking exclusively to News24, renowned epidemiologist Salim Abdul Karim has called the funding withdrawal unprecedented. In the House, Malema called Washington's aggression towards Pretoria, quote, Israel's revenge toward our moral stance regarding Palestine. And Malema believes the worst is yet to come.
This is the early stage of economic isolation, leading ultimately to military intervention. Next, AGOA will be terminated, escalating tensions between USA and South Africa. Our government must dismiss opportunistic African and racist groups exploiting US imperialism to fund their racist fantasies of an independent state.
Well, for more, check out our live blog of the PEPFAR debate with expert reporting and analysis by journalist Jan Gerber and the team. And finally, local comedian Rory Petzer reckons Woolies has beef with its suppliers. Well, that's what he learned when he saw some empty shop shelves this week. Woolworths has clarified its red meat supply is running low in some stores. It's largely due to a supplier problem, it turns out, as well as the recent heavy rains in Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal. Petzer joked on X, formerly known as Twitter, that he thought Woolies went vegan. Of course, Woolies would have told us they went vegan. The retailer has since confirmed that fresh produce like cauliflower is also in short supply. It's working on restoring these product lines as soon as possible. For more, check out our business article by journalist Nick Wilson. This month's free audiobook for our News24 subscribers is Children of Sugarcane. It's a novel by veteran journalist and broadcaster Joanne Joseph. It details how indentured labourers were brought from India to the colony of Natal in the late 1800s. Here's an excerpt from that.
Shanti rises in the dark, feeling it knit around her, crackling like dry wool. She shuffles out of the small house, not wanting to wake her dreaming daughter. Her heart begins to batter against her ribs, but she only presses forward more deliberately.
Well, that's our show. It's been The Lead on News24. Thanks so much for listening. If that may have been in your car, home, or office, we really appreciate it. If you'd like to be part of the show with any comments or input, perhaps a voice note that could be featured in our next edition, you can drop us a mail at tips@24.com. That's TIPS at 24, the numerals 24.com. We look forward to hearing you on The Lead on News24.